When you hear gaming's most difficult challenges, what comes to mind? Completing Halo on Legendary difficulty? Dead Rising's 7-day Survivor? Any game from the Dark Souls series? All difficult challenges, but there's one that has caught my eye. 5 years ago, I was recommended a small indie game called Hollow Knight. I became instantly hooked. The amazing art and music, the fluidity of the gameplay, and the fast-paced combat. Needless to say, this is easily one of the best games I've ever played in my life. But after getting 100% in the game, I found a secret area, Godhome. This area is home to the hardest challenges this game has to offer, the Pantheons. A boss rush game mode that has you challenge 10 of the bosses you've encountered during your journey throughout the game. But the final Pantheon has you take on every single boss in the game in one run without dying. I quickly quit the game after not being able to overcome this challenge. But about a year later, I wanted to prove to myself that I could conquer the final Pantheon. So I returned to finish what I started. But once again, I was not worthy of taking my place at the peak of Godhome. After years of passing by Hollow Knight in my Steam library, taunted by its triumph over me, I decided this time I'll return to earn my seat on the throne at the peak of Godhome's strongest warriors.
For the glory and the fall.
Now let's get started. So what is the hardest part of the final Pantheon? It is, without a doubt, the ending. The end of the Pantheon hits you with the 3 hardest bosses in the game right at the very end after a 30-minute marathon of bosses. These bosses being Nightmare King Grim, the Pure Vessel, which is a harder version of the final boss, the Hollow Knight, and Absolute Radiance, a harder version of the true ending boss, Radiance. The final Pantheon is actually the first time you are introduced to Absolute Radiance. Unlike most bosses in the game, these 3 bosses deal double damage, making the margin of error even smaller. Final 3 bosses are no joke on their own, let alone at the very end of a boss rush with every boss in the game. So I have to get really good at these fights, so once I reach them in a run, I'm not a deer in headlights and just choke the ending. The plan is simple! Beat the 3 hardest bosses in the game on Radiant mode. If you don't know what Radiant mode is, it means the bosses have more health and you have to beat them without getting hit a single time. Am I masochistic? Maybe. but maybe you need to be a bit masochistic to overcome the hardest challenges gaming has to offer. So let's start there. Nightmare King Grim, the god of nightmares, is the first of the 3 bosses you encounter. Lucky for us, King Grim rewards us with a bench break area after his fight, so instead of having to beat all 3 of the hardest bosses in a row, we only have to fight Pure Vessel and Absolute Radiance back to back. King Grim is definitely the easiest of the 3, but this fight is still very difficult. You could easily slip up and lose 2 hearts, and obviously getting greedy is not something you want to do during any of these final fights. Something I am prone to doing. You will see me take damage for getting greedy a lot in this video. Oh man.
I think you smell like
Fun fact, way back when I was playing through Hollow Knight for the first time, when I got to Nightmare King Grim, I streamed all of my attempts to beat him over on twitch.tv/RodaIY, and it took me 2 separate 6-hour streams to finally beat him, around 12 hours in total. Yeah, it was a very hard fight for me, but since taking on the Pantheons, I have learned that the Pure Vessel is a lot harder, and Absolute Radiance is in a league of her own. So I got to practicing. I memorized his attacks, how to properly react to them, and how to capitalize with as much damage as I can while not risking getting hit at all. There were 2 attacks that I could get off a good amount of damage on, 2 attacks that were impossible to damage him, and 2 attacks that I avoided trying to damage him entirely because the risk of getting hit was too high. This one specific pufferfish attack was kind of a phase transition. He only does it when he reaches a certain amount of health, and he will only do it 3 times, so it's a good indication of how much progress I've made through the fight. So after getting a bunch of attempts in, I did this. Yes, let's fucking go. So, with that done, it's on to fight the second hardest boss in the game. Mighty God of Nothingness, the Pure Vessel. The Pure Vessel is the Hollow Knight's prime form, unaffected by the infection. The Pure Vessel and the Hollow Knight share a very similar moveset, but the Pure Vessel is so much faster. The difficulty spike from Hollow Knight to Pure Vessel is massive, so there is no question why this fight is the second hardest in the game. I knew trying to beat Pure Vessel on Radiant was going to take a lot of grinding, focus, and execution, so I didn't waste any time and got to grinding immediately after beating King Grim. Is what I would say if this was true. But the truth is, I already beat the Pure Vessel on Radiant about an hour before I started runs on King Grim. I had just woke up and got on to get in a couple runs before I started recording, and within 10 minutes or so, I had actually done it. I beat the Pure Vessel on Radiant in about 8 or 9 attempts. I clipped it, but the clip is only about a minute and a half long, so it doesn't show the full fight, but it did capture the ending where I actually beat him. I knew that this was a bit of an upsetting triumph. I didn't get to show the attempts leading up to the eventual win, so immediately after beating King Grim, I went back and did it again. And just like that, I beat Pure Vessel hitless not once, but twice. I felt so ready to take on the final Pantheon, but I knew I had to practice Absolute Radiance. The most challenging opponent was yet to come. Now, it was time to practice the hardest boss in the game before hanging it up for the night. And after killing it against King Grim and Pure Vessel, I was confident I could easily trash on Absolute Radiance. It took me 43 attempts to finally beat Radiance on normal. I didn't even have Radiant mode unlocked. I would have to beat Radiance on the other two difficulties first to be able to take on Radiant mode. It was clear I was far from ready to take on Absolute Radiance in perfect state at the peak of all others. So after 51 attempts total, it was time for me to rest and come back tomorrow. So beginning day 2, I got on and started up a run of the final Pantheon. I just wanted to get a warm-up in and see if I could do the impossible and first try it. I bet you know how that ended. Fuck, dude. But losing here made me realize something very important. I needed to practice 2 other bosses that I never even thought of. Grey Prince Zote and Markov. Now, Prince Zote is a difficult fight, definitely harder than King Grim, but not as hard as a Pure Vessel. But Markov, remember when I said Pure Vessel was the second hardest boss in the game? Well, I was wrong. Markov is easily the second hardest boss in the game. He is one of the most common run killers when it comes to the Final Pantheon. So before continuing my practice on Absolute Radiance, I had 2 more bosses to beat on Radiant. So I got to work. Now, Markov is kind of a funny boss, and when I say funny, I mean very, very, very frustrating. His fight is so simple. He has a shield that constantly revolves around him, he shoots swords that target straight at you, and he moves around the arena. That's it. But here's what really makes him difficult. His arena has no floor, only platforms. Oh, also there's some RNG to the fight too. Where his swords spawn is RNG, and where Markov moves is RNG, which makes for some sticky situations. These factors make this fight one of the most unpredictable in the run. It is brutal. I continuously did attempt after attempt, only taking a break to watch a YouTube video giving tips on how to beat Markov. 80, 90, over 100 attempts in. I was losing my mind. No! Of course. Dude! The RNG required for that sword to spawn there is fucking crazy. It even seemed like Markov figured out the best strategy to use against me was to fly straight at me. He just wanted to move straight at me with 2 shields instead of 1 this time. Fucking realized that the secret of this fight is to just run at the person. Wow, look what he did. He ran straight at me. Just run at me, dog. Cover all options. But all was worth in the end when I finally beat him. Oh! Let's fucking go! Oh my god. Wait, that was nuts. With Markov done, there's only one more boss to Radiant before I can continue my practice on Absolute Radiance. Great Prince Zote is a lot easier than Markov. After having to fight both Absolute Radiance and Markov, the rest of the bosses like King Grim, Zote, and Pure Vessel feel so much easier. Zote took me no time to defeat. Oh, there it is. Beating Zote so quick made me feel very ready for the Final Pantheon. Oh, I'm so fucking ready for this shit, bro. I could see my practice paying off and how much better I've gotten. So now that I've practiced those 2 bosses, it was time to return to Absolute Radiance and get more consistent at that fight. Just for fun, I fought King Grim and Pure Vessel on normal and first tried both of them. I was getting really good and consistently beating every boss but Absolute Radiance. I won't lie, trying to beat Markov for so long fatigued me a bit, so after only 10 minutes of practicing Absolute Radiance, I started up a run of the Final Pantheon to see if today was the day. And after beating 4 of the hardest bosses in the game, I felt confident I could win this time. ended off the night losing to Nailmaster Sly and Prince Zote twice. Since I didn't practice Absolute Radiance much, I knew exactly what I was going to do today, but first, a warm-up run of the final Pantheon to see if I could first try it today. And this run made it past Zote this time. I could feel it. I was playing very well. King Grim down. Pure Vessel only hit me 3 times. Before I knew it, I was at the final fight with full HP. All that stood between me and sweet victory was Absolute Radiance. But I choked in the first phase. I played horribly. Simple as that. So I went back to practicing. Once again, I was stumped. I decided to try and complete Ascended difficulty, which means the boss has more health and deals double damage, but I just couldn't close out the fight. I was getting better and getting to phase 2 and 3 more consistently, but I would just choke at the end. It was looking hopeless for my side goal of beating Absolute Radiance on Radiant. A small loss I was going to take, but the main goal was always to beat the final Pantheon. I was determined to beat Radiance on Ascended since beating it on Radiant would be so much harder than I originally thought it would be. Attempt after attempt, death after death, I had to keep going to be as ready as I could be for this fight at the end of the Pantheon. After 121 tries, I had beaten Absolute Radiance twice, once on normal, once on Ascended, 0 times on Radiant. Fuck yes! Fuck yes! Fuck yes! I folded. I took the L on trying to beat Radiance on Radiant. But after beating that, I felt more ready than I ever have. So I went back to the final Pantheon to finish what I started. No! Fuck! But I wasn't done yet. Just like the last run, I beat Markoth, I beat Zote, I beat King Grim, and I beat the Pure Vessel. Once again, It was just me and absolute radiance.
Phase 2. Not that bad. They hit me with the trap in a run. They hit me with the trap in a run. Why is he...